Hey everybody, welcome back to Reds Minor Leagues Talk. I'm Doug, he's Courage. We're back this week. The focus we're going to look at is pretty much going back to last year's trade deadline. It's been 11 months, and I guess a week now at this point, since last year's trade deadline. The Reds have kind of gone all in pretty much at this point with the rebuilding process between Walt Jocketty and Dick Williams, and kind of what the organization wants to do and moving forward with trying to get back to where they were a couple years ago. So we'll just kind of jump right into it. The biggest trade was of Johnny Cueto, brought back 3 left-handed starting pitchers. Courage, why don't you kick us off with things and talk a little bit about how some of those guys are doing?
I would take a look, obviously, Cody Reed, the latest name to join them. And if you look at the greater mission of the rebuild, it was they stayed away from the higher risk prospects at the lower levels, except for one. We'll get to him in a while. But for the most part, they were looking for major league ready prospects who would get to Cincinnati in short order. And on this front, they've been able to do that. Brandon Finnegan has been a Red all season long. John Lamb has settled into the rotation at his moments. And Cody Reed, the last to join them, made an electric debut in Houston. But the stuff hasn't really backed up. It just hit a wall. At the highest level, he's been a little home run prone, but overall, very good fastball, premium velocity for a left-hander, and a slider that just moves in the last 3 feet, up and down, in and out of a strike zone. It's just a matter of taking his lumps at the major league level, as Brian Price said. All 3 already up in the majors, just getting tested there. I don't think any of them have anything left to prove at AAA. They're Reds now for the long haul.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing with each of those guys is, the inconsistencies. You said Brandon Finnegan and John Lamb, they've been there all year. Now, Lamb obviously missed time with the injury and he had some rehab starts, but I think that at this point all 3 are probably up for good. It's just going to be finding that consistency with all 3 guys, especially with Lamb and Finnegan. They both kind of had control issues at times come up. Haven't really seen the walk rate with Cody Reed be an issue in the major league level. But I think the command of his fastball is kind of what's been the biggest issue, and it's led to the home run problems that you mentioned that he's run into at the big league level. Hopefully that's something that they can work on with him at the big league level, and he can kind of get past that. At this point through his 4 starts, over 37% of the fastballs or fly balls that he's given up have gone over the fence, and major league average is like 12%. So
it's not sustainable by any stretch.
Absolutely not. They've been leaving the yard 3 times as often as the average major leaguer gives up. So that's obviously not going to continue to happen. But he's definitely been missing with his fastball in the middle of the zone too much, and major league hitters are not missing it at this point.
And I also think, if you take a look, I was reading this the other day, that when you're a guy like Cody Reed and you have a 3/4 arm slot, the more experienced hitters are going to pick up on that fastball right at the start, and they'll see it a very long time. They'll see it for all 60 feet 6 inches on its way to the zone. And the key is keeping his mechanics very similar when he's throwing the fastball and slider. If he can tip his cap early and the opponents pick up on it, we're in for a long day, and really the better analogy, a short start. So we'll see how he can get his mechanics back under control, command that fastball, because when he has it under control, it plays in the zone. There's a little late life, and it's touching 96, 97 right out of the gate. So a very electric player, just needs to figure it all out, and he'll be able to do that as a Cincinnati Red, not a Louisville bat.
The other big trade that they had last year was moving Mike Leake to San Francisco. Now, what's interesting about that trade is that the headliner at the time was not Adam Duvall. He was seen as more of a complementary piece to that trade, and here we are 11 months later, and Adam Duvall is an all-star, and he's participating in the Home Run Derby. Now, obviously, guys can be in the Home Run Derby. He's probably got a lot of home runs, and Duvall definitely has that. He's got 22 right now. He's had a solid, but to me at least, it's been an unspectacular year. He's hitting 249, which, I don't really care too much about batting average, but Adam Duvall also doesn't walk too often, so he's currently sporting a 289 on base percentage, which that's way too low for a corner outfielder in my opinion. He definitely offsets that with the power some, but in the long run, I think that maybe he's more of a very good fourth outfielder, platoon kind of guy just because he's not going to, or at least right now, he's not getting on base nearly enough to be an everyday player if you can upgrade at that position.
Mm-hmm. Now, you look at Duvall, if he could get on base even 40% of the time, and that's a big jump from under 300 to 400, we'd be licking our lips if he could get on base at a 400 clip.
Well, I mean, if anybody can get on base at a 400 clip, I don't care what else you're doing. You can start. If Adam Duvall could get on base at a 310 clip, he'd definitely be, somebody to really start paying a little bit more attention to. But at 289, that's just not going to be enough.
Unfortunately, we can't clone Joey Votto. But if we could take some of it, we can't redistribute it either. Yeah. But if we could bump Duvall's on-base percentage a little bit, make him a little more viable for the rest of the lineup, well, we'd be able to talk. But long story short, he won the job out from Scott Schebler at the beginning of the year. Schebler's been mashing recently in AAA, so he's an all-star. He's earned the spot for now, but it'll be interesting after this trade deadline. We'll talk about that at the very end. We'll see what Scott Schebler can do for the Reds in August and beyond. But certainly kudos to Adam Duvall. Reds developed an all-star really in the span of a year with Duvall. And Kerry Mella, the other piece of that Mike Leake trade, has had moments of brilliance in Daytona, Doug.
Yeah, I mean, he's not been bad this year in Daytona, even though, even 2 weeks before the season started, nobody really expected him to return to Daytona. I mean, even the manager in AA mentioned him as being somebody to expect in the rotation out of spring training, and here we are. It's July 9th, and he's still sitting in Daytona. He's got a 3.08 ERA overall, and for the Florida State League, I mean, that's not outstanding. Nobody really hits in that league, so generally speaking, the ERAs are a lot lower. And his walk rate is up, and his strikeout rate is easily at a career worst. But we talked a little bit before the show, and you actually had some pretty interesting stats to kind of show where he struggled and where he succeeded. So why don't you tell us a little bit about those?
It's a pretty fine line, and we may have mentioned it in another podcast as well, but if Kerry Mella can get out of the first inning, he's lights out the rest of the way. First inning ERA, and every caveat for ERA not being the best, but it's the easiest one to prove this point. His first inning ERA, 7.31. He's given up 14 runs in his 16 starts in the first inning, but the rest of the way the ERA drops to 2.13. Very stark difference. They're hitting 4.05. 7 league hitters, Florida State hitters, against Kerry Mella in the first inning. Second inning that is cut basically in half, 2.03 average, 2.46, 185. So the biggest issue for him is if he can get those first 3 outs, he can keep going and give you a quality start. Otherwise, it's been a quick night for him and a quick shower. Just a matter of getting him through that first inning.
Yeah, I mean, if they can figure out whatever it is that's causing him to struggle so much in that first inning, the rest of his numbers are very good. He's just the control's not there in the first inning. His walk rate is way, way higher in the first inning. His strikeout rate is way lower. And, I mean, obviously he's going to give up a lot more runs in that kind of scenario. From the scouting reports that I've heard from this season, they pretty much are the same that they were last year. The stuff is still there. Just for whatever reason, whether it's a preparation before the game issue, he's just not quite ready to go all out, I guess, in the first inning, or if it's a mental thing that, is just compounded on itself after the first few games of the year where he struggled in that first inning, I'm not sure. But he definitely looks like the same guy overall. It's just figuring out what is causing those first inning struggles right now.
And then last, shift our focus to the Marlon Byrd trade recipient, Steven Johnson. Came over, we saw him in Pensacola not too long for the end of the 2015 season. Took a stint over in the Arizona Fall League, then settled into the Louisville bullpen to open the season. And it's mixed results, generously. Very tough April and May. He's turned it around in his last 9 games, however. 1-1 record, which includes a few spot starts. 2.18 ERA, which includes 182 average against him. So a tantalizing reliever, perhaps, and caught into service early in games as well. But, we were talking Major League as a possibility with his Fall League status heading into the beginning of this year, and really with his bullpen in Cincinnati, where they're throwing every arm at the situation. We figured Steven Johnson's name would be one discussed, but again, April and May just setting him back a little bit. Though.
Yeah, I mean, he came into the season, he was on the 40-man roster. The team outrighted him, and he passed through waivers. Clearly, no other team in baseball thought that he was worth giving a look at. And as you mentioned, he had struggled early in the season, and that could certainly be a part of it. When he was acquired, it was past scouting reports that mentioned a big-time fastball. He had been up to 100 miles an hour in the past, but he's not anywhere near that these days. He's more of a 91 to 94 kind of guy. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the guy that he's going to be. You had seen the scouting reports mention triple-digit fastball in the past. Definitely not that kind of guy. As you mentioned with the Reds bullpen, the way it had been earlier in the year, there was probably a better chance for him to get that opportunity to get the call up then, and he just was not performing at that point. As the Reds are getting more and more pitchers back off of the disabled list, and guys like Michael Lorenzen and Raisel Iglesias are moving into the bullpen, at least for the short term, there's probably not going to be as many opportunities for him. He's going to have to really start pitching well. Hopefully he can carry the streak that he's been on forward, and maybe he'll get that chance again. But I think right now might be a little bit tough to see him this year, in the big leagues at least.
Could be. They have moved him a little bit. Really, if you look all year long, his focus has been long relief, and again, a few times he's been called in either to start or to back up a starter. Went 4 innings on June 14th, 4 innings in his most recent decision, July 2nd. 1 run, 2 hits, and 5 strikeouts mixed in. The strikeout stuff is there, even if it's not 100 miles an hour. It's just a matter of whether or not the window is still open. And when you're on the 40-man roster, you have a chance. But since then, outrighted and ready in AAA if they need him. But fortunately for the Reds and the way their bullpen has come around in the last few months, they may not need him really until September, if they even need him then at all.
Yeah. Now, one other guy that I actually like to talk about, not related to the trades, but as we've got a little bit of time here, that we may see in the bullpen later this year, is Amir Garrett. Now, I know we've talked about him a few different times, and the reason I really bring him up is he's on the 40-man roster. He's in AAA now, but he's going to be the only Reds participant in the Futures game, which is taking place tomorrow afternoon. And not only is it awesome to be able to see these guys get the opportunity to pitch on the big stage in the major, in major league stadiums, in front of 30 to 40,000 fans. It's very nice to, personally for me at least, to see all of this, information we get, because these guys are playing in the major league stadiums. We get the TrackMan data, the StatCast data, how fast are these guys throwing exactly, what kind of movement are they getting on their pitches. That kind of information for me is very exciting. But I just wanted to bring that up a little bit, just because, we will get a chance to see Amir Garrett for the second straight year in the Futures game.
This is a guy who everything you read about Amir Garrett, they'll mention he's a two-way athlete, St. John's college basketball player who a few years ago focused on baseball. Well, I hate to say it, but we need to kill the basketball angle of this story, because he's pitched in 2 major league stadiums at this point, including the one he'll make a future home out of. This is a guy who we saw in Pensacola for the first half, earned the promotion in every sense of the word. He's looked more like a pitcher and less like a thrower every single start I saw him. Very good slider, backs it up with a fastball, and the results speak for themselves. And fortunately for Reds fans, Louisville's a fairly short drive, and he's there every 5th day, but if you can't get there, he's on your television Sunday afternoon. It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, so I guess let's jump in a little bit to the upcoming trade deadline. Obviously, the Reds are not done with their rebuild. It would seem, at least according to all of the experts, that there are 2 guys that the Reds are maybe not necessarily actively looking to move at this point, but probably in the next few weeks we'll start getting a lot more serious about moving, and that's with shortstop Zach Cozart and right fielder Jay Bruce. Both of those guys have values built around different things. Zach Cozart, he's definitely hit well this season for a shortstop, but he's more known as a defender first. Now, the strides that he's made at the plate in the last year and a half have been, very good to see. After several years of being a very low on base percentage guy, he's He's boosted his on-base percentage up quite a bit. He's hit better, and he's hit for more power. Now, exactly how much anybody's going to pay for either of these guys, I'll be honest, I really don't know. But I think that the Reds would be smart to move both of them at this point before the trade deadline to try and, push forward with that rebuild a little bit sooner.
Absolutely. I think the challenge for us is it's hard to reverse engineer these trades. So we can't look necessarily, for instance, at the Pensacola team and say, this guy is the player to be named later in the trade. So, Cody Reed wasn't necessarily on the radar last year, and he was really considered the throw-in of a trade before his breakout season in Pensacola and then put here in Louisville. But, Jay Bruce certainly with a big bat. Saw the other day either from, or really one of the Cincinnati statisticians, that he's one of an exclusive few to hit 19 home runs in each of his last 8 or so seasons. And that's a premium tool for right field. A certainly intriguing profile and an underappreciated Red. We'll just see who's really selling, who's looking to move any players at the trade deadline. Hard to say what the Reds are going to get back, but really, Doug, I think the emphasis could be on those on-base guys. We just haven't seen it here really in Peraza. There is a speed and defense profile. Alfredo Rodriguez, Cuban pickup, doesn't really fit the OBP bill as well. But the Reds aren't quite finished in their rebuild. They've done as much as they could so far, moving contracts, drafting, going to the international players, and now one more time they'll go to the well for Cozart and Bruce, and they've almost got all the pieces in place. It's just a matter of what this team will look like in 2017 and how the rest of the prospects, the firm developed Jesse Winkers and Alex Blandinos and Phillip Ervins, continue to make strides.
Yeah, I think that one of the interesting things with this upcoming trade deadline is, one, if they do decide to move both of these guys, because they're both under control for next year if they want them to be. Jay Bruce has the option, and Zach Cozart's still under contract. But it seems that last year they were more focused on guys that were ready to step into the major leagues relatively soon. They avoided, for the most part, going after guys that were in A-ball or rookie ball, focusing on guys that were in AA and AAA. Is that going to be something that they're still focusing on, or are they going to go maybe a little bit more with the higher upside guys that are a little bit further away now that they're a little bit closer with the rest of their farm system being ready to take that next step? And obviously that may depend on what positions they want to target and who's available, for who's interested. And obviously there's so many different workings that kind of would determine how things are going to work out. Who is interested in Jay Bruce, who's interested in Zach Cozart, and what those farm systems have available.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen the reports so far. The Giants a few weeks ago were at least calling about Jay Bruce. It's just a matter of when the Reds are willing to answer, and certainly with the All-Star break coming up and, almost 3 weeks to the deadline, we're in for another fun summer here as we figure out which future Reds are on the way, and as we pay our respects, say our goodbyes, possibly, to Zach Cozart and Jay Bruce.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all we've got time for today. Thanks for listening. If you're not subscribed, hit that little red subscribe button and you'll get updates whenever we publish something. We've been pretty busy. Had a few player videos show up. Had a few interviews posted in the last week. Hopefully going to keep that coming. I'm going to be traveling at the end of the month. I'm going to go actually visit Courage down in Pensacola for a couple of days.
We're going to hit the beach.
Oh, I don't know about that, but we're definitely going to hit some baseball. And then I'll be making the trip across the state over to Daytona for a couple of days as well to see the Tortugas play. So we will definitely have tons and tons of footage from those games, and maybe we'll actually get together and do this live and in person together while we're down in Pensacola. So just keep checking back in, and thanks for watching.